942. Continuing the rating climb. Let's see if we can reach 1,000. Let's play the Dutch. I think I remember reading a comment somebody asked for the Dutch. I don't know a whole lot of theory here, but I've talked so much about don't move your F pawn, and what are we doing here? First move of the game, we're moving our F pawn. So constantly we do need to be aware of this. However, one of the things that you can do when you're worried about Queen H5 is put your knight on F6. The knight obviously does a great job of controlling that. Now white is planning on probably taking our knight, so we are going to have to keep an eye on that. We also have kind of the follow-up, G6. So if this ever happens, we could play G6. So as long as we have one of these two options, we should be okay. But sometimes as the game goes on, things change, and that's what you have to be careful for. I don't know if this is the best move. See, let's keep an eye. All right, we still have G6, so we should be okay. Let's go ahead and trade this and play Bishop E7. We're going to need the support here, I think, to get rid of this pin. So let's do that. And so takes. I'm okay because I can take with the queen. And again, I still have that G6 move. Okay, that's what if I didn't play Bishop E7 here and I allowed, like, let's say I played a random move over here. Let me go back for a second. I played a random move over here and allowed this, and I had to take with my G pawn. Then that Queen H5 move all of a sudden is a killer move, and I'm in trouble. So that's why it's important that I keep this available to me. Okay, so I think Bishop E7 is an important move here. And I think White's doing a pretty nice job of just immediately attacking us in a way that we have to be careful. So this is kind of showing you. Okay, Queen F3. Not sure about that one. Let's calculate here a little bit. If the queen takes, okay, we win a piece. That's pretty obvious. What if the bishop takes? We have to take back, and it's just a big trade. It's probably fine, or we simply castle. Takes. It's a big trade. I think I like that better. Gets my king out of the center, puts my rook on an aggressive file. And that's one of the reasons you play the Dutch, is because if you trade this pawn, you can use this file to attack. So let's go ahead and do that. Take advantage of that open file, or half open file. It's half open because there's a white pawn here. If this pawn wasn't here, it would be considered open file. The white has to be careful, obviously, because we can move this knight basically wherever we want. We can create a discovered attack here, so that opens up some possibilities for us. I wouldn't be surprised if white just decides to trade everything here, which is fine. We're ahead because we've castled. White has not. We're kind of slightly ahead in that situation, and then our rook would be, on a nice open file. Okay, and they do trade. Let's take it. And I could take with the rook, but I think I'm okay with the queen trade, and I think I will go ahead and do that. All right, and here we go. Really, both captures would be okay, but I do want to activate my rook, and so I'll go with this option. G3. Okay, so white wants to fianchetto over here. All right. So, I have to be careful. If I play B6 trying to kind of counter that, well, white's going to get there first. And I don't think that's necessarily what I want to do. So I'm thinking about other options. Maybe knight to C6. Looks like a nice developing move, just attacking here. And what I will probably do is play like D6 and just put my bishop here. It's a little bit passive, but I think I'd rather do that than potentially put myself into some trouble here. Now, I could still play B6 and maybe just go to trade for these bishops, like by moving my knight to A5. That's also an option. Okay, white castles, which defends this, but it leaves this pawn undefended. So looking around looks like a free pawn to me. I'm going to go ahead and take that. Okay, so bishop d3, what I notice is it blocks the rook, which means I can take this pawn. However, there would be a tactic where the bishop could take, and then I'd lose my knight. But do I really care about that? Because it's still a trade. It's basically a big trade, and it would open up this move. I think I actually like. I think I am going to take that. And the primary reason is because at the end of all this trading, this move is very powerful. Because if the king has to move here, I've essentially taken these pieces out of the game. I guess white could play the rook back here, which is still a big trade, but I'm still fine with that. Yeah, I'm still fine with that because I'm ahead of pawn. But maybe it's better to just keep developing. I don't know, but I will go ahead and go for, yeah, that's what they're going to do. And here we go. Check. And I think white's only move is to go here. If you play king d2, I've now, like I said, eliminated these two pieces from the game. You can't use your rook because it's stuck. You can't move your knight because it's pinned. Yeah, this is not the way for white. So now I'm just going to develop, and white has to figure out how can they ever use these two pieces. Otherwise, they're going to play the rest of the game with only a rook. Okay, so now I think what I will do is play d6. I'm going to put my pawns on dark squares here so that my bishop is actually able to do something. I'm going to start with d6, then e5. Then my bishop will have options, and we can go from there. Okay, so that's a decent move from white. If I trade, it lets their pieces out, so I'm not going to trade. I'm going to come over here. Yes, I'm attacking the pawn, but really I'm just trying to keep this pin, right? Because this is taking two pieces out of the game, so this is very powerful. Now, white could do the same thing, but the difference is I have the option, and we're going to see it. I have the option to play b6 and bishop to b7, which not only attacks white rook, but also defends my rook. So it's a way to free up the pin. White does not have that option with the knight and the rook in this configuration. You can't move the knight anywhere, which defends the rook. So it's not the same situation. This is much better for me. So bishop b7 is coming next. There we go. So I've gotten out of the pin. My pieces are active and doing stuff. And white's about to lose the rest of their pieces here. They're going to lose the rook for sure. They can save the knight, but the rook is now a goner. And there we go. We got the resignation. Okay. New game. We'll play e4. And let me mix it up a little bit. Yeah, let's play something different. Let's play the Danish Gambit just to have a little fun here. The Danish Gambit, you start with d4. And basically, you just let this pawn capture all the way down here. Okay, they're not going to do it. All right. That's too bad. I'm going to play bishop c4 and potentially set a little trap here of takes, takes, takes. And if the king takes, I can snag the queen. Now, knight c6 does defend, so that's a pretty nice move, I guess, by our opponent. So let's play knight f3. We'll kind of just transpose back to the Italian game and go from here. Okay, bishop g4. So whenever I see this, it's particularly when it's not defended, so there's not like a knight sitting here defending it, I want to start thinking, do I have some tactics here? And there is a trap. There is a queen trap where you can sacrifice your queen to get checkmate. But unfortunately, I don't believe it works with the knight here because black could actually recapture with the knight and it defends the bishop. Yeah, so I don't think this is going to work, but I am just kind of checking if there's a tactic here because it almost looks like there still should be, but I don't think in this particular case there is. Yeah, okay. So with that in mind, I think what I'm going to do is probably just play c3 to defend my center. Because white is actually threatening here, some things here. They trade first, and so I want to have extra piece defending that. Okay, let's recapture. And if they take here, I could take with the queen or the pawn. If I take with the queen, this isn't really a problem because I have a checkmate threat. So I probably would take with the queen, keep my pawns looking nice and pretty, and still have a safe place to castle. I don't know if black's going to do that, but just thinking ahead. Okay. Again, I'm checking for tactics here. Doesn't quite work, sacrificing the queen, because the king has some options. But I'm still planning and still keeping an eye out for that. Let's play knight c3 to defend my center. Because I have the c-pawn open or moved, I also am looking for ways to activate the queen over here. Queen a4 would pin it and threaten something like d5. Queen b3 would create a double attack here and here. So I'm thinking about that as well. Okay, now it's not... So I could play here if I want to be greedy. And probably black's going to castle, and then I could take this pawn. The issue is it's just a pawn. And I'm using a lot of time, right? I'm spending 2 moves, and black's going to be castling, putting their queen on a good square, probably maybe playing rook b8. Maybe I would have a follow-up, but it gets kind of tricky, and I don't really like to go pawn hunting like that because more often than not, you get into trouble. You just get into trouble. So what I like to do is just focus on the basics, okay? Especially at this level. Just focus on the basics, castle, develop your pieces, control the center, And you're going to be just fine if you do that. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, let's go ahead and develop this piece. I'm going to put it on e3 because I want to chase this bishop away and I want to be able to recapture with my queen. And I don't want to lose a pawn. So that's why I'm putting it here. So now I'm going to play h3. Black's probably going to go back, which is fine. I don't think I will chase it down anymore because my king is here. Okay, they do take, which makes my life easy. And now you can see why I put the bishop on e3 so I don't lose my pawn. Okay, and now we've connected our rooks. We can start thinking about where do we want those to go. So behind the center pawns is an option on the open file. Looks like this one's probably going to go here. Could put them like this. Could put them like this. Let's go rook c1. Sometimes you don't necessarily know, and you just kind of make a decision. That's what's happening here. I don't necessarily know that this is best, but I was kind of planning for b5, and now you can see maybe there's going to be a tactic open up here on the knight. So I'm pretty happy with that decision. Okay, let's just go back to b3. And I'm starting to think about even already maybe knight takes b5. After captures, I can take the knight. But we'll see if black's going to let us do that. They play b4, so I can't actually win a pawn. I can still hop into d5, which looks like a pretty good move as well, because if the knight takes me, guess what? I take with the bishop. The bishop is pinning the knight to the rook, and it's being attacked. So I don't think black could take. They would probably have to move their knight, but then it gives me the option to get the bishop pair. I've already gotten one bishop. If I can get the other bishop and have two bishops against two knights in an open position, that's a pretty significant advantage. So I think knight d5 looks like a great move. Okay, they do take it, and here we go. You're going to see, and now we're going to win something here, either the rook or the knight. Rook for bishop trade, or we're just going to win the knight for free. And so, you could argue that I kind of got a little bit lucky by playing rook c1, but I also was thinking what might happen, right? And I could tell from a6, like, why would my opponent play a6? Probably they want to play b5. So a rook here might be attacking the knight, and so you can kind of see how, yes, a little bit lucky in the sense that, okay, black did play that, but I also was planning for that, if that makes sense. Okay, and they do just resign. All right. All right, let's play e4. We're playing a 1,000 rated opponent. I think that might be our first 1,000. Let's get the center. 2 pawns in the center. Okay, and I'm going to try to play, I believe it's called the Lion's Jaw or Lion's Claw, something like that. I did a video on it where you go for this setup. You put your bishop and your queen here. You create that battery right away. And a lot of times when you see this opening, yeah, they're going to fiend kettle. They're going to put their bishop here. They're going to castle. And you have a very nice plan of attacking that setup right away. So that's one thing that I like about this opening. Here we go. We have our center. Notice when we play f3, we have to be careful for the dark squares, but we have our queen and our bishop really helping to support and control a lot of these dark squares. So if I needed to, I could drop the bishop back, and you just get a lot of support. Okay, this is basically what a lot of players do, right? They play d6, they bring their knight out, they do the same thing. They don't really want to think about opening stuff. So what we do is we go bishop h6, immediately attacking. This is a very aggressive opening. And it's kind of an exception to the rule. Like normally you're supposed to be developing your pieces and controlling the center and castling. This opening, you get a little bit of center control. You develop a little bit, your bishop, but then you just launch an attack. So you kind of have to know what you're doing with this opening. So I would say go watch that video if you haven't seen it where I talk about this. But here's the plan. h4. And because we know where black's king is, we're trying to just attack it right away. So we're going to play h5. We're going to try to trade this, open up our rook, and ultimately checkmate the king. That's what the goal is. Knight to h5. Okay. Interesting move by our opponent, trying to stop what we're doing. So the immediate move that jumps to my mind is g4. And the reason is I need the knight to move so I can play h5. g4 makes it move. Question is, where's it going to move to? If it goes back where it came from, I'm happy, right? I got this move for free and I keep attacking. So probably the only move that makes sense for black here would be knight to g3. Working these guys. And what am I going to do? Do I have a follow-up? I think I would play rook to h3 to attack the knight. Where's the knight going to go? Well, my pawn is here, so it's not going to go back there. It can't take this. It can't go here. It can't go here. So it's going to trade. Really the only thing that I see that the knight could do, right? So g4 there, knight rook here. Okay, and it trades. I take. Now, I don't have castling rights. My king is stuck here. A little bit exposed, but the knight is out of the way, and we're ready to continue the attack. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And again, this is a good example of how this is an aggressive opening. So you want to be careful if you're not used to this, or if your tactics are weak, you might not want to play this way. But I am going to play this because I do like to attack the king, especially when they play these sort of King's Indian type setups. I like to attack on the king side. It's a lot of fun. And the fact that the pawn is already on g6 makes it a little bit easier to attack, because when you play h5, you can immediately trade and open up your rook. Okay, so but yes, I mean, you have the trade-off is that your king is not quite as safe, right? And I'm not developing all my pieces. I'm not castling. So it's definitely a more advanced type of system. Okay, and the knight does come in, so we'll play rook h3 like we calculated, and we'll just recapture this with our king. Okay. And one thing I want to be careful of is look at the rook. If black were to play this and I allow them to trade, all of a sudden my king does not feel very safe. So I think if black were to play f5, one thing that I might consider doing is maybe taking, and when they recapture, pushing by. And the reason I would want to do that is because let's just say f5 takes, push. This pawn and this pawn now it's gonna be hard for them to get traded, which means it's gonna be hard for the rook to attack my king. As opposed to if I just allow black to trade, all of a sudden, bam, there's the rook, there's my king, and I'm gonna get attacked, right? So that's just something that I'm thinking about. Now, I might just ignore it and continue with my attack and play like h5. But that's definitely something I would need to think through if black does indeed play f5. Okay, they play e5, which is one of the kind of main ideas in this type of setup. You strike at the center. In this particular case, I'm not super concerned. I could push by, or I could just ignore it and allow this capture. And why would I want to do that? Well, because I would gain an extra attacking move, right? So if I push by, that's how I spent my turn. I made it, yes, I locked up the center, which is useful, but I didn't attack. Or I could say, you know what, I'll let you take me. I'm going to use this turn to keep attacking. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because this is a big deal. If this trades, then I have like almost a checkmate threat. Okay, because I have the option to takes. Queen comes down because now the rook is defending, right? All I need to do is get rid of this pawn. And so this is a huge threat. In my opinion, much more significant than if black takes here. So I'm deciding I'm not going to even waste my time. I'm going to be aggressive and go ahead and keep attacking before black does figure out a way to open up my king and get some pieces coordinated to attack me, right? You don't want to waste time in these types of openings. Okay, so they trade now. So we will bring the queen down. Same threat. We're going to take here. It's going to open up my queen and rook battery for checkmate. That's the plan. Now, black has some options. They could play knight f6 to defend. I would consider g5 if they do that. And see if I would want to be willing to sacrifice my rook. Also, if I can come in like this to get rid of the knight, black could stop me with c6. Okay, they do just take instead. I think that's a mistake because this threat. We're threatening checkmate next move. So black can't even recapture now. Just get mated. So I think the game's over. I don't know what black's gonna do. I guess you have to play knight f6 now to defend this. Then I'm just taking here, and I guess you can go there. I guess the game's not technically over, but it's not looking good for black. Okay, so they do find knight f6 to stop the checkmate immediately. Yeah, I'm just looking if there is a way to force a checkmate regardless of that. I don't think so, because the knight is defended by the queen, so I won't actually be able to take it. And if they find king to h8, the game is going to go on. I guess the other thing that I could do is actually, now that I look at that, but if I play g5, I was trying to play g5 to make the knight move, then I will lose my rook, and I kind of need the rook to create the threat here. So I guess I don't actually have a checkmate right away. But this still looks pretty dangerous for black. And we'll go with that. Okay. So at this point, queen is kind of already maxed out. Rook is already kind of in a good spot. I think I need to use some other pieces. So trying to envision where would I want a knight to land. Maybe g6. It's covered right now. f5, h5, knight here. So maybe like this could be a maneuver. I think I'll start with this one only because I want to give my rook access to the game. So we'll play this one first. We'll see how black's going to react. And we're basically going to keep attacking, but also kind of keep an eye on my king. I don't want to give black any opportunities to checkmate me. Well, by the way, I should mention this idea of allowing a pawn to get in front of your king is actually a really nice defensive idea. Notice how that pawn is totally blocking. Wow, what a move. Notice how that pawn is totally blocking my rook and queen, to where I can't actually get to the king because my own pawn's in the way. So this is a good idea by my opponent to allow this to happen. Now I don't know what's going on here. It looks to me like losing a piece. I guess they want the knight to come in, which okay, I could see the idea, but I don't think it's quite worth it. Okay, so obviously the queen is under attack. I think I'm just gonna simply go here. Just keeping an eye on where's the knight gonna go next. It does look like this is an option. So where would I want my queen to be? I think f4 is a good square. All right, I am back. We have 3 kids under 5, so sometimes I just need to make sure everything is okay. All right, so there's a threat here, but it doesn't really do much as long as I don't get forked, so I don't want to go here. I could sacrifice this, but I think I want to keep my rook supporting the pawn here. So probably king to e2 looks like a good move. By the way, when you're facing a knight, if you ever go next to it straight, you don't, excuse me, you don't have to worry about any checks. If you go diagonally, there's always going to be checks. And if you go straight with the space in between, there's always going to be checks. But this is kind of a pattern you want to remember. One straight square away, I guess would be how you would say that. There's no checks from the knight. So it's if you're in time pressure, that's a good one to remember. So yes, black can take here. I don't really care. I'm going to move my rook and be just fine. And black has to be extremely careful about their king, because if they ever, let's just say, move the queen, bam, we have checkmate right away. So tough spot for black to be in because of what's going on over here. And what did I just say? I get what they're trying to do, create some offensive chances. They just forgot about the queen was actually stopping the checkmate there. So, all right, let's keep going. 968. D4. Should we play another? Let's try it one more time, see what our opponent's going to do this time. So we saw, the knight c3, e4, bishop g5 approach, which I think was a pretty good approach from our opponent last time. C4 this time. Okay, so very different. Let's play knight f6. Like I mentioned, the knight controls the h5 square, so we don't have to worry about checks from the queen. And one of the big points behind playing the Dutch is that a lot of times, whenever e4 happens at some point in the future, you can trade it, and after you castle, your rook is involved in the game. Okay, that's kind of one main point to it. Okay, I'll play e6. I think you could play d6 or e6. There's different ways to play the Dutch, but I'm just going to go with this one. And we can play bishop e7 if we need to deal with the pin. We can also go on the offensive with bishop to b4 and just start attacking this way if we want. I think I will do that since white did not put me in a pin. I don't really need to block the pin, and so I will go with the more aggressive bishop b4. And I'm eyeing this square. I might pop my knight in there and put pressure on these guys. Okay. So what are we going to do about this? We could play knight c6 to defend. I would have to calculate what happens after d5. Looks pretty tricky. We could play knight to d4. There's a little tactic there. We could win the queen. That doesn't look too terrible. We could also play a5 or c5 could be options. We could simply just trade it off and not have to worry about it. Queen e7, I don't know that that works because the bishop can come in. So, I'm thinking about knight c6. I like it because it's a developing move. It puts pressure on the center, and it also opens up a very tricky idea. Now, if the queen goes back, what would I do? That's the only thing I'm not sure about. Would I play c5 at that point? Oh, let's play it. I don't know if this is the best move. It could be the wrong move here, but developing, defending, attacking the center kind of checks all the boxes of a solid move, and so I'm going to go ahead and play it. Okay. Let's go ahead and play knight to e4. And what I'm doing is piling up here and also centralizing my knight on a nice square. There is f3, and normally if your knight's on e4 and your opponent plays f3, they can't do that because you have queen h4 check. But in this case, queen h4 check, there's g3, and it looks like white can because they have the bishop defending. So the pawn actually doesn't defend because it's pinned. But in this case, the bishop is defending. So I think white could have gotten away with f3. They didn't do it. So at this point, I think, okay, they've forced me to make the trade. I'll go ahead and do that. I've made them waste a move. And now I've got the doubled pawns. So I have some kind of weaknesses that we can attack. Still thinking about attacking this bishop. It's a very aggressive approach. g5 followed by h5. But it's going to lead to a crazy game. Lots of tactics and stuff. Now, the issue is my king isn't really going to have a safe place if I do that. So I'm definitely committing to that. But basically what I'm saying is white's king's not going to be safe either. And so I think, a lot of times if you play this move, you're in trouble because queen h5 immediately happens and you're just losing. White's queen is over here. So I think I can get away with this because of that. And that's what I'm going to do. Attacking this bishop. If it goes back, I'm going to play h5, threatening to trap it. If it goes here, I'll probably just trade it off. And then we've even further weakened white's pawns, because right now they're still sort of connected. Not sort of, they are still kind of connected to these. But if this captures, they're isolated. So I would be happy to do that. Okay, they do go back. So I'm going to follow up with h5. And the threat is to go maybe d6 and h4 and trap the bishop. And if white tries to stop me with, like, let's say h4, then I'm going to take here, further weakening black's pawns. And then you're going to, yeah, that's what we see. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And you're going to see what I'm talking about. Weak pawns, doubled, doubled. This is now kind of a weak pawn because it doesn't have the support of the f pawn. So lots of weaknesses for me to attack. So here, I don't really want to fix white's pawns for them. I could push by and totally lock things up, but I think I might just leave the tension, because if white takes me, I'm pretty happy. Then my queen comes out, boom, boom, and I think I'm okay with that. So I think what I'm going to do instead is focus on what else needs to happen in the position. So this bishop needs to be developed. I can't just indefinitely not develop. So we've done a bunch of other stuff. I think now is probably the time to play like b6 and get the bishop out. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play b6 and get ready to fianchetto kettle the bishop, or potentially even put it here and then knight a5 and attack this pawn. You can see, like, when you play an opening like the Dutch, a lot of times you will get these kind of wild and different type of positions, right? So that's just something to be aware of. If you like that, and you like the complications and the craziness that happens, play this. If not, then maybe you want to avoid it. Okay, castle queenside. So white's king looks kind of vulnerable to me somewhat, so I'm thinking about moves like this. Thinking about moves like knight to a5 to give my knight options. I'm also thinking about going here first, because that's a pretty, good diagonal. But maybe I want to go here too. So yeah, maybe what I'll do is I'll play knight to a5 first. I want to see where white's going to put the queen, and then I'll make a decision based on that of if I want my bishop to go to b7 or if I want it to go to a6. Hey, I wasn't expecting that. So I can't go to a6 immediately. They've taken that away. So I'll go to b7. Or I could chase the queen away first, and then maybe the queen wants to come here, which is actually not a bad spot for the queen. Actually not. So let's think through that a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do now is just play bishop b7. And on queen here, I'll probably just slide my rook over. And what I'm paying attention to is, does it give the queen options to infiltrate my position at all? And notice if I put my rook here, those are controlled, that's controlled, and the queen wouldn't be able to infiltrate any further. Okay? And if this happens, I could take with the queen. I have pressure here and pressure here. Now it's going to get kind of wild, but I think I'm okay with that. So let's play bishop to b7 with that in mind. And yeah, pretty crazy position. But I like these kind of positions. Okay, knight to f3. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm thinking about queen e7 because that seems like the most straightforward way to just attack the king. I'm also thinking about this. I mean, that seems like a pretty significant threat from white. If that knight lands there, that's going to be a very powerful knight. So I don't really want to allow that. If I push by, the knight can still go there. So I don't love that. I mean, I could trade, then it fixes white's pawn structure. Do I really want to do that? I don't know. My bishop's actually pretty strong too if I can get it here and attack. So tough. It's a tough position, honestly. I think I will go ahead and start with this because this is kind of like a useful move. Gives me the option to castle if I need it, which could be significant, but also it creates a pretty powerful threat, right? Like if my queen gets over here with the knight, remember, queen and knight combo on an open king, very, very dangerous. So I think white does have to deal with this. Maybe they have to play queen b4, queen b2, king b2, like something that defends this pawn. Queen a4. Okay, so can I play bishop c6 to chase the queen away? Guess it would have to go to b4. Trying to see if there's a way that I could force the queen away and get the pawn. It doesn't look like I can, fortunately. But yeah, again, tough position. How do we want to deal with this? Do I want to push by and let the knight just sit there on g5? I mean, I say it's a powerful knight, but really, when I look at it, it doesn't really attack much, especially if I end up castling this way. The knight's probably just going to kind of be sitting there, and then maybe I could focus on the side of the board in the center. Doesn't actually look terrible. So maybe I will just lock everything up over there and migrate my attention to this section of the board. That actually does seem like a pretty viable plan. Okay, so upon thinking about that, I'll play g4. Before, I didn't want to lock it up because white's king was still here. I thought maybe I could attack the king. Now that he's kind of castled over here, it's not such a big deal to me. Okay, thinking about castling just to get my king a little bit safer. What else can I do? I can attack the queen. It's probably going to go here. I can... I don't really feel like I have a ton of other moves, so maybe I will just go ahead and cap for lack of better options. And I'm keeping an eye on the time. It's 3 minutes. I'm going to start to play a little bit faster. And this is a tough position to play quickly, and only because I don't really see like a clear idea of like what I should be doing. So sometimes when you have those things happen, you have to just force yourself to make moves because otherwise you will put yourself into time pressure and you'll end up blundering later. And that's what I don't want to do, right? So I might just be forcing myself to make some moves, whether or not they are the best. I'm just going to try not to blunder. So for example, I don't want to blunder this, okay? So I'm not going to be moving my... Oh, opponent disconnected. That's too bad. We had a pretty good game here. Well, what I was going to say is, you know, in a position like this, I'm getting lower on time. I don't see any clear plans. I'm going to be focusing on not blundering. Okay, so my knight is sitting here. I'm not going to play b5 and lose my knight. My queen is guarding the square. I'm not going to move it away and allow a knight fork, right? Yeah, it's a shame. Our opponent was playing pretty well there. I think I was probably just going to play a move like king b8 next, just tuck my king a little bit closer to the side. Maybe, you know, bring this rook here to just kind of control that square so my queen can move and I don't have to worry about getting forked. It's a tough position, right? Because I would like to put my bishop here, but the knight's controlling that. I just lose my bishop. Like, it was tough. But unfortunately, we don't get to see how it was going to end. So let's play a new one. Okay, e4. All right, let's play. We'll go back to knight f3 for this one. we play another Ponziani? Let's do it. Okay, and we've talked about this before. We play d4, temporarily give up the pawn if they want to take it. They can also do this, and then we push by, because we don't want to lose this pawn. So we push by first, gain a tempo on the knight, and then we recapture with the pawn. Okay, we'll retake that. All right, so knight to c3 looks like a blunder. Takes, 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 and we get forked. Okay, so we definitely want to avoid that. So we need to play bishop d2 or knight to d2. Knight to d2 will potentially preserve the bishop pair longer. Bishop to d2, you know, black could take it right away. Does it matter? Probably not. I'll go with the knight, because generally speaking, if you can preserve the bishop pair, it's a slight advantage. But we'll go with the knight. And this pin, if I want to get rid of it, I can always play a3 and force the bishop to make a decision, because if it goes back, we can play b4. So keeping that in the back of my mind, although right now, very well defended. I'm not like super concerned about that pin. Okay, I think that's a good move by our opponent. d5, very strong move, because it lets out their bishop, and it also really solidifies their knight here. So that's a good move by our opponent. I think what we need to play now is maybe bishop d3 or bishop b5 or bishop e2 if bishop g4 is coming next. Could be annoying. So bishop b5 would kind of counter that with our own pin. So yeah, maybe I'll play bishop to b5. And I'm getting ready to castle, which will relieve this pin. Okay, so they do pin our knight. So you want to be careful in situations like this where both of your knights are pinned. Because if you're not careful, like for example, let's just say I played a random move like a3. I think black could take here. Well, in this case, I think we're probably fine. But sometimes what happens is you need the one knight to defend the other, but you actually can't use it because they're pinned. In this case, we would be fine. Takes, 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 takes. But sometimes you do have to be careful. So with that in mind, I think what I'm going to do is castle, which... Actually, that's a good example. If I castle, black can take. This guy's pinned, so I would have to take with the bishop. Takes, takes. And then, again, I can't take with the knight because it's pinned. I would have to take with the queen. And then black could take, take. And guess what? They've opened up my king. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily a huge deal, honestly, in this position. Because I could probably even use that to attack black's king once they castle here. But it's not like the end of the world. But that is something that you want to think about. So yeah, I think I've thought about it. I'm okay with that, so I'm going to castle. But definitely you have to be careful when you have the crisscross pins on both of your knights. Okay, so they take that way, which gives me the option to simply recapture with my knight, and I don't have to get any double pawns, which I think is what I'm going to do. And we might even see an opportunity here to maybe take advantage of this bishop over here. So for example, if I play a move like queen a4, now I've got pressure on the knight, pressure on the bishop, could be dangerous. Or even takes and then queen a4 looks like a simple fork on the bishop and the pawn. I think it is. I don't see. Of course, black could defend the bishop, but then we take the pawn. We can move the bishop. We also take the pawn. I guess they could play c5. c5 would save the pawn and defend the bishop, and if I capture, they could capture back. So that might be the way that white gets, or that black gets out of it. So maybe I do need to play queen to a4 first. Same idea. I'm going to take here and then win the bishop. And if they defend the bishop, I'll take the pawn, but it avoids that line that I just mentioned. So just to clarify what I just said there, I noticed that I could take, play queen a4 and get a fork. But if I do that, black has a way out of it. They'll push the pawn forward, which saves their pawn and also defends their bishop. And if I trade, they just trade. Again, saves their bishop and they have a fine position. If I play queen a4 first, which is what I'm going to do, I'm still threatening the same thing, to take here and have a fork. But now they don't have the option to push that pawn to save it. So they can defend their knight right away, but then I take and win the bishop. Or they can save their bishop, let's say they move back or defend it. And then I just simply take and win the pawn. So you can see there how the ordering of moves was important. I needed to play queen a4 first before I captured the knight. And now I don't see a way that black can save both of those things. Okay, so they try to save the bishop, but now we will simply win a pawn. Let's go ahead and do that. And I'm just verifying that there's no tactics or hanging pieces or my queen getting trapped or anything crazy like that. I don't see anything. I'll go ahead and snag the pawn. Okay, so interesting move. Of course, we could trade queens, but what I notice is that the queen is no longer defending both of these pawns. I think I'm going to just get a free pawn here. Question is, which one is better? And that looks pretty obvious to me. This one is the one to take because this knight is kind of black's best piece, just sitting in the center, well defended. But as soon as I take this pawn, now it's a liability for black, and it has to move, or they have to figure out another way to defend it, which I don't see any other ways. It's actually looks like the knight is trapped. Something in my eye. Looks like the knight is trapped. Can't go back because of the pawn. You can't go here because the knight, pawn, rook, pawn. And you can't defend it with f5 because queen. So I think black just lost to the piece there. All right, so they realize that they're losing the knight. They're trying to at least get a pawn for it, but we'll simply retake with the rook. A c5, interesting move. So what do I notice when I see c5 is that the bishop has no retreat squares. So what I think I can do is play a3, drop the bishop, and let's just verify. You can't go there, you can't go here, and you can't go here. And so again, we see piece trap. We just saw it with the knight, now we see it with the bishop. Okay, so he's taking the pawn, but I'm going to take the bishop. And looks like a big trade to me. Is trading good? Yes, it is. Why? Because I'm already ahead. So I will happily trade a bunch of stuff off. Take the free pawn. And not a bad move, but it's very easy for us to deal with. We can defend with the rook. We can also defend with the knight and attack the rook. I think I will defend this way because it threatens checkmate at the same time. Okay, and our opponent does see that, but we can potentially... I'm thinking knight to f5 to still keep the king trapped there. I'm also thinking to go here and take this pawn. We could even go check first, then check, and then take the pawn. But then, yeah, I think I will go with knight to f5. So the point is, I'm still threatening checkmate. And if like g6 happens, it's still checkmate. Nope, there you go. It's still checkmate because the knight is still controlling the escape squares. So that doesn't quite cut it. And let's play a new game. All right, Scandinavian. Let's go ahead and take it. Ah, knight to f6. So one thing you can do, if we try to defend, we'll probably see an Icelandic gambit with e6, and it's a lot of fun for black, not a lot of fun for white. I don't like playing those types of openings. I don't like voluntarily going into a gambit that I know is very aggressive, very dangerous. Like you're just putting yourself in a tough position. So I like to play different options. And one option that you have here is bishop to b5 check. And a lot of people will play bishop to d7, hoping that you just like trade or something. But what you can actually do is now go back to c4. And what you've done, it almost looks like you wasted a move, but you actually, wow, this person's playing b5. This is a good move. This is like one of the main lines, I think. Interesting. What I was going to say is you've actually made it a little bit difficult for them to recapture this pawn, because now the knight can't take. You've got to defend it with your bishop, and you've blocked off the queen by throwing in that check. I'm going to go back here. I think this is one of the good lines for black b5. I don't remember the theory behind it. I don't know if it's a5 next, or if black does something else. But I think that is one of the legitimate lines. Bishop f5, and now they are threatening. Yeah, maybe this is the reason. Is now they're threatening to take it, and if I try to defend with my knight, there's going to be b4. So well played there by our opponent. I'm getting the feeling that they've really studied their Scandinavian. That's the feeling that I'm getting. So interesting. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, what can we do? I think we have to just move on, develop, and we're going to have to allow the recapture now. Like I said, I don't really know these lines, but we're going to make the best of the situation here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and castle. I think that looks like a very safe, natural move. Get the king out of the center, bring our rook over. And I'm going to play careful because I'm getting the vibe that black knows this stuff. So I'm going to watch out for tricks and traps and crazy ideas, just in case they've studied some line or some course or something. I want to try to play very carefully, make sure we get out of the opening, the middle game or end game, where it's maybe more of an even match, right? If my opponent has really studied this. Okay. D3 or D4 is what I want to play. D3 is more passive. It does kind of shut down the bishop. D4 more aggressive, gives me more control over D4. I think I will, over E5, sorry. I think I will go ahead with D4. Puts my bishop out. And see what black's going to do. Okay, knight C6. So I'm going to play C3 just to solidify my center and also take away this square from the knight. And also to give my bishop an escape route if for some reason it gets attacked and I don't want to lose my bishop for a knight, I'll have the option to go back here and trade it for this other bishop. Okay, let's play rook to e1. I think a rook needs to be on the open file or the half open file, so we'll go ahead and do that. Black is playing very well, so let's just keep developing. Bring the knight out. Notice I don't really have a good square for the bishop to go to. Can't go there. I can't go there. I want to trade first. I guess is an option. I can't really go here unless I'm willing to get it traded. So what I'm going to do is just simply bring my knight out and just wait. We'll just wait a little bit. Okay, knight comes in. Interesting. So I am going to check like what's happening. Am I going to get into trouble here? I don't think that works. I don't think I have to worry about that. This looks like potentially the most dangerous square. So I'm thinking about knight to e4 because it blocks off the bishop. So then the knight can't go to d3. Of course, if they take, I take. I also create an attack on the knight. So knight to e4 looks pretty good. Knight to f1 was my other move, but then it allows this. And I have to be willing to deal with that knight there, which I don't really love. So I think, with all that in mind, I will play knight to e4. So I'm attacking this. This is my immediate threat here. It takes f4. Wow, okay. So our opponent is just being very aggressive. The issue with that move is I don't see a follow-up for black. Like, yes, it's going to weaken my king, but what's the follow-up? And I don't see it. So I'm going to take it. And, okay. All right. So whenever this happens, what I like to do is try to figure out how do I consolidate my king as quickly as possible. Get it safe. So if somebody sacrifices a piece like this, you want to make sure that you get your king to safety. So I think I'm going to play the move knight to g3. Kind of adds a piece in front of the king and also takes away these squares from the bishop. And I'm going to try to play h3 and get rid of that bishop. And if my queen can come over here, then my queen's also defending, my knight's defending, my queen's defending, and I've created another piece, which gets me closer to the end game. All of those things make me feel much better. So that's the idea. Knight g3 followed by h3. If I would have played h3 immediately, the bishop could have went back here. And then if I attacked it, it could have went back here. And, you know, basically the bishop could stay alive. And I don't necessarily force a trade. This way, h3 would force the trade immediately. F5. Okay, so whenever your opponent makes a move, you want to ask yourself, what has changed about the position? What's changed about F5? Well, it's no longer defended. So check or taking with the rook seem like viable moves. Now, I do want to ask myself, what happens on F4? I have to move my knight. Is that a big deal? Not really. So I think I will take this. I could also continue with my original plan of H3. But because black has just given me this really nice, powerful move, I think I'll just do that instead. And I'm actually going to take with the rook instead of the bishop. If I take with the bishop, it's an obvious check. The opponent's king just has to move, and that's about it. But if I take with the rook, I'm threatening a discovered check, and I'm threatening to take the knight over here. So it's much more powerful. So here's a good example of, I think a lot of beginners, when they see this, they would just immediately take with the bishop and think, oh, it's a check, it's a free pawn, let's take it, right? Here's an example of how creating that discover check is much more powerful. And now we're going to see, I have lots of good options here. One is to take the knight with check. Another, take the bishop with check. And another that I think is even better maybe is rook here with check, and I take the queen. Now, this is an interesting situation because if I take here, how many points do I get? 3 points. Or if I take here, how many points do I get? 3 points essentially for free, and the game goes on. If I go here, the king moves, I take this, and then the rook takes. I got 9 points, but I lost 5. So I got 4 points. So it's slightly better. So those are the kind of things you do want to kind of calculate out and make sure you are making the best trade. But with that in mind, I think I will do that. Now, the other thing that I need to be careful of here is this move that my opponent just played. If they take me, it opens up the rook and the bishop, and that's a pretty serious threat. So does my opponent actually have time to do that? So let's say I do go for the check, they move over, and I take. Do they have time to take me? Well, no, it doesn't look like it because I'll be able to like take here with a check, and then I could probably deal with this, although how would I deal with it, actually? Maybe bishop here to defend, so it looks like I do have a way to deal with it. But it's a tricky position, you do want to think through those things. Like, for example, I could also bail out if I needed to and play like a check here and then simply just take this with my rook. And after takes, I take back. Maybe that would be a better option. I don't think it necessarily is. I think I am going to go with this one and take the queen. But, you know, I'm just trying to illustrate, like, you do have to be careful. You can see the power of those discovered checks. It just gives you so many options with your rook. You can go places that you normally could never go, right? Look at this move. 1, 2, 3. I can never move my rook there unless I have a discovered check. Okay, let's go ahead and take the queen. And all right, now we can deal with the threat here. I think the simplest thing is to move my knight now. I don't want to allow this to open up the rook. So I'm just thinking, where do I want to move my knight to? Here, looks like a nice centralized square. I can also go back here, more of a defensive position. Let's just go with the centralized knight to e4. And one thing, it's important that, you know, even though we won the queen and we won the piece earlier, game is not over. And our rook is out of the game. Our bishop is not doing a whole lot. So it's not, you don't want to take it lightly and just, oh, it's over, we won. Like, no. You still have to play good moves. You still have to think through things. You still have to calculate accurately and correctly. You still have to not make blunders, right? You could very easily throw a game like this with one wrong move. So, I mean, imagine if I didn't see that this pawn could take my knight. I allowed it to capture. Next thing you know, the bishop is taking here, forking my king and queen with the assistance of the rook, and all of a sudden I'm losing, right? It can happen that fast. So just keep that in mind. So I really would like to try to trade. Now, I don't see a way to force a trade immediately. What I'm going to try to do is activate my pieces as best I can. And the question is, how do we do that? So I think the rook needs to get involved somehow. I think the bishop needs to move. Can't go there right now. So maybe bishop d2 to get the rook over is an idea. I'm also thinking about queen d3, not really so much to attack the pawn, but more to get my knight out of the pin so that I can use my knight. So what do I want to do? There's also a4 with the idea of activating the rook this way. It's kind of a unique thing. I think I really want it over here, though. It really looks like it should be on the e-file. So with all that in mind, and also I'm getting lower on time, so I'm not going to be, I don't have the liberty to just sit here and think forever about the perfect move. I have to just make a decision and make a move. So I'm going to go with bishop d2 for now. Probably going to move my queen somewhere next and let the rook come over to e1. That's my plan initially. Maybe even queen f1, just to kind of keep it sort of by the king. Okay, I'm not worried about that. Like I said, I'm happy for trades. So yeah, let's actually go queen f1. It attacks the pawn. More importantly, gets out of the pin and gives my rook the option to come into the game. So I'm trying to use all my pieces here. Okay, black defends that. Let's go ahead and play rook to e1. And now I'm feeling better. My rook is in the game. We can start thinking about moving this knight somewhere to create the attack on the bishop. Okay, so I think I want to just take that. Yes, he could take, but that's just a big trade. My bishop is defended, but black could throw this in and I would lose a piece. So that's something to think through. Am I willing to lose that piece? Probably not ideal. Yeah, I don't think I do want to lose that piece. So what am I going to do? Move it back here. Get it out of the line of fire. Important feature, the rook is no longer back there, right? So that's a huge deal. You might say, Nelson, you're just putting it back where it came from. That's true, but I got the rook out. So it's not nearly as bad as if I would have had to do this before where my rook was still stuck on a1. Okay, so that's a big deal. Also, I'm not worried about this. My bishop has options to come back here. And now I think I am threatening to simply take this. And I'm not worried about this anymore because there's no more tactic. Okay, I don't see anything crazy happening there. I'm just going to take it. I feel like my king is still pretty safe. Ah, okay, black wants to win a pawn, which, okay, I missed that, but it's just a pawn. And the fact that we traded some major pieces when we're this far ahead is a good sign. Okay, 145, though, I have to play kind of quickly, and it is a tricky position. So, you know, I'm scanning for, like, big tactics, big pieces that I might lose, and also thinking about, like, let's see if I can force some trades. Because if I can get these rooks traded, that's going to free things up nicely for me. Also, it helps when you have pieces that are defended, right? Everything is kind of defended. That's very helpful. I don't have any pieces that are just sitting, waiting to be captured. Okay, so that's a trade. I will take it. I'm not going to fall for the trick of thinking I can take the rook because the knight would come back and take me. But this way, it's just a trade. Okay, attacking my pawn. I could, of course, defend, and actually, I think I might do that. I'm also thinking about coming down here and attacking, but I don't really want to let the rook get close to my king. I think I will go ahead and bring the queen out, defend, and also I'm starting to think about maybe attacking with the queen. Still don't love my bishop, so maybe actually bishop d2 is a good follow-up now that I'm looking at this. Also, I'm using my opponent's time, right? So that's important. While your opponent is thinking, you want to be thinking too, especially when you're low on time. Okay, I am going to play bishop d2. Like I mentioned, I had been thinking about that when black was thinking, and I was kind of prepared with the move. Actually, it looks like the rook is trapped. Now that I see that. Okay, so what's going on here exactly? Sometimes in a position like this, you're low on time. Rather than trying to calculate the best option, find one that you see that's pretty good, which I see, and do it. So I'm going to take here. Yes, I lose my queen, but I'm getting a rook, and I'm getting another rook, which is an even trade, essentially. 2 rooks for a queen. Pretty even. That was pretty easy for me to calculate. So I stopped calculating all the other lines. I just focused on that one. It did it. Why? Because it takes me to an end game that's very simple, very easy for me to not blunder. All I have to do is watch out for the dark squares, essentially. So all these pieces are good, right? And here we go. Let's try to force a trade. Let's try to hunt down some pawns, get a queen. Should be a relatively easy win at this point. So good example there of how sometimes just go with the simple option that you can see quickly, avoid the other ones. Now, of course, I've played chess for a long time. It's easy for me to find those simple options very quickly, but you know, that's kind of what you need to get towards. Let's go here and we'll start hunting the pawns. Actually, that's a fork, so we'll go ahead and do that and win the bishop. Okay, and our opponent does resign. So, yeah, that was a good example there at the end. Like, this position, and I can actually even turn on the engine here. Right here. This is a tricky position. Yeah, and I was thinking about this move, bishop c3. I wasn't sure if it was the best. I was also thinking about taking here, moving my queen, maybe like queen c. Lots of moves that were coming to my mind. And rather than analyze all of them, because I only had a minute, I just noticed that, okay, if I take here, it's a check. Black has to take me back, and I could take here. 2 rooks for a queen. That was enough for me. I was like, that's good enough. I'm already way ahead. Trading off all these big pieces means I'm going to go into an endgame that's very easy for me. Or I could have sat there and said, okay, let me think. Bishop c3 looks like a pretty good move. What's black going to do? Probably move the king. And then wait, what am I going to take? I'm going to take here first. I'm going to take here. I'm going to move my queen. It could get complicated. And with only a minute and 10 seconds on the clock, I could easily spend 30, 40, 50 seconds thinking what the best move is. And all of a sudden, I'm about to lose on time. So instead, just play the obvious move. Take it, and it doesn't matter if it's the best move. If it's good enough, you play it, you move on, you get the win, and you keep going. Okay? Hope that made sense. Play one more quick game here. And if we win this game, we will be 1001. 1001. Let's play d5 this time. I don't know why. And let's play the Queen's Gambit accepted. And I'll play the system that I've showed you guys before. Okay, I don't know if it's the best against this. Let's see. What are we going to play here? Let's just play something. Yeah, we'll kind of play the same sort of setup. So a lot of times what I like to do is go for this setup. So e6 and knight f6. If the pawn ever pushes on you, you can always hop it to d5. And that's usually a nice square. Because once you've eliminated the c4 pawn, if they push, that's pretty straightforward. Okay, I don't want to allow this now. So I will play bishop to e7 to deal with the pin. And usually the bishop that gets blocked off ends up going on b7. So we have 2 ways to do it. You can go a6 and b5, which is what I like to do. It's more aggressive. Or if you play a6 and they stop you with like a4, you can always just play b6 and then go there anyway. And so they can't really stop that. Okay, so we have to move the knight. Like I said, d5 is pretty much where you're going to go with the knight. And if they trade here, I think I will take with the knight. If I take with the queen, it allows this. And what does that trade do? I mean, actually, that's actually not bad for me. So I could do that as well. But that trade actually makes this no longer a weak pawn, which I like. So I'm going to take this way to keep the pressure on this pawn. Now, the other trade actually defends my c4 pawn. So I would still be up a pawn, so maybe it was fine. But I'm trying to illustrate how you would keep a backward pawn that you can attack. Okay, so let's play a6. Like I mentioned, I'd like to play b5 and then fianchetto on my bishop. And if white, for some reason, plays a4 to stop that, we can just play b6. And this move is actually not wasted. It's actually a useful move that stops some pieces from going here a lot of times. Okay, interesting move. Queen a4 check. So I could just change it up, play bishop d7 to gain a tempo. b5 now would be a mistake. Even though it looks like a fork, the queen is hitting my rook. So white would simply take, and I can't take back or I lose a rook. So I don't want to do that. Knight to c6 looks like a decent option. Puts more pressure here. Knight to d7 looks like a decent option as well. The idea is that I would follow up maybe with knight to b6 later. I would love to castle, but you can't castle when you're in check. Yeah, I guess we'll just go with this one. And I'm going to probably castle and then loop the knight over here, or maybe fianchetto the bishop here. We'll see what white's going to do. Bishop to b5, so they're definitely taking advantage of this pin, but I'm going to simply castle, because that's what I wanted to do anyway, and it gets out of the pin. If they take me, I take them. I'm happy. So let's just do that. Okay. So I think knight to b6, like I mentioned, is what I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and do that. And white has to be careful because they need to leave the queen somewhere here. Actually, never mind. They lost a piece. I didn't even realize how good this move was. It's a really good move because not only does it hit the queen, it also defends my rook, which means I can take the bishop next move. Yeah. The white got a little too fancy there, and now we can see I can actually just take this. Got the defense now, so I don't lose my rook. And yeah, white's just down a piece. Okay, so let's think. What do we want to do? This is under attack. We could probably defend that. We could play c6. I don't love how my bishop is like totally stuck back here. So don't know if I'm going to do that, but otherwise we're going to lose the pawn. So probably have to. Also don't love that I'm giving up this square for like a knight to sink in there. So maybe this is a case where I say, you know what, that pawn's not really worth it, and I just do something else. What about knight c6? Knight c6 is good because if the queen takes, then bam, I take this guy. So I'm actually just trading. I like that. I like the look of that. Let's play knight c6. Okay, and now you can trade. I'm just checking to make sure I'm not, falling for any tactics or leaving any pieces hanging or anything, but everything looks good. That's defended. That's defended. This is defended, right? So it's just a trade. There's no pin shenanigans because I would simply take the queen and I'd be fine. And we'll take back here. Okay, so white's probably going to be bringing a rook over pretty soon. I'm still not totally developed, so I do need to fix that problem. So maybe now's the time, bishop d7 to attack the queen. If I can do it with tempo, that looks pretty powerful. So let's play bishop d7. And I am going to be careful of a move like this. Now, I think I'm fine for two reasons. Number one, it's defended by my knight. But also, I'm going to have time to move this. So, like, once the queen moves, I'm thinking about just going here. And notice, if I can get this bishop here, I've got both of these pieces defended with pawns in active squares with lots of options. Bishop's controlling a lot of squares. The knight can hop to different places, and they're well defended. Those are like the setups that you really want to look for. I think I'm going to do that. I could also take this pawn for free. Play that next move. So both of them look to be very good moves. Maybe I will just take the pawn since it's there, and we can just go here next move. Okay, and I think I will do that. I don't really see any reason to not do that. It looks like a great square for the bishop. Also, the other thing I like about this is the knight is dominated by the bishop. So what does that mean? It means anywhere that the knight would try to move to, my bishop is controlling. Boom, 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 boom. And usually that's a great square for a bishop. It shuts down everything that the knight could do offensively. But at the same time, I get some bonus coverage from my bishop over here. Some extra squares that I'm controlling. So I like that. Speaking of extra squares, let's jump over, I think, right here and threaten checkmate. Seems like a pretty tough threat to deal with. Of course, you could play g3, but then you permanently create those weaknesses, which I would be very happy to see. You can't go f3 or I'll just take it. The only move that I'm seeing is maybe knight to e4. Nope, but even knight to e4, we simply take, and the rook is hanging at the end of all that. So probably the best try, but tactically, it just doesn't quite work. So we'll take that, and now we have a back rank checkmate. All right, good game to our opponent. 1,001. We did it, folks. A lot of people said I was going to be losing under 1,000, so no losses yet. But we did have some close games, so you weren't wrong about that. All right, hope you guys learned something. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.